we have a poll. Regular, can you put that up for us? The question is, all right, what is your favorite type of camp you've experienced in Black Rock City? Small and intimate, loud and grand, unique and unexpected, or gotta love a dive bar? Give you a minute to answer that. These are mutually exclusive categories, I guess. You just have to make a choice for tonight. All right. Looks like unique and unexpected is the winner. I would agree with that myself. Yeah. So thank you for participating. Welcome to our first Campfire Talk of this season. This is our second season, and we are so excited for our talk tonight. Thank you for joining us. We have a few guidelines for our event today. Please mute your mic if you're not a panelist. If you have a question, please type it into the chat. We will get to those at the end of our time together tonight, if we have time. Be respectful in your participation, share the air, be present, speak from your own experience. Feel free to share your experiences in the chat. We're here to learn and grow as a community. Our chat moderators will, like I said, bring your questions and comments at the end of our discussion. Also, as always, please take some time to fill out our feedback form after the meeting. We always want to know what you want more of, what you want less of, and especially if you want to climb on board and help us keep this jalopy running. So we have a fantastic panel tonight. I will introduce you one by one. So Zvika, did you make it in here? Can you give us a wave? Surrender. Hi. Zvika has been...
I'm here. Sorry,
That's
just trying to get my camera working, but I'm here.
Zvika has been a member of Milk and Honey since 2016 and serves on the board and camp leadership team. He lives in Berkeley with his ranger and training son. He loves dancing, ritualing, and staying up all night talking to serendipitous soulmates. Crystal Ho, give us a wave, Crystal. Hi. She resides in Vancouver, Canada, and is the lead of our Playa Alchemist camp, one of our largest communities on Playa. You would recognize her camp by the Grand Pyramid at 10 o'clock. Crystal has been going to Burning Man for nearly a decade and was inspired to rise to the challenge of creating such a large-scale camp by one of her passions of creating transformational experiences for others in her work in the default world. Thank you, Crystal. Bill Chief, where are you? Hi. Mayor of the House of the Monkey Lords, is a single parent, acrobat, and a 25-year condom professional. Thank you, Filchi, for joining us tonight. Jason Chin is the camp lead for Pinhole Project, a 20-plus year burner and creator of deliciousness. Don't know what, but we'll find out more later. Trixie is a camp lead for Gender Bender, a Burning Man theme camp and community dedicated to gender liberation, education, and creating thriving spaces for trans, non-binary, gender non-conforming, and gender exploring humans. Ariel has been burning since 2005 and has been on Playa every year since, except last year. Thank you for coming. All right. So we'll go through our topics one by one. We have several tonight. The first one is going home, it's complicated. So to start us off, panelists, given all that has happened in the past few years, what changes are you considering in operations and the makeup of your camp? What lessons have you learned from the last year and a half, And in regards to camp planning and getting your camp back to Black Rock City. Who wants to go first? Jason, you unmuted yourself.
Sure. In the theme of the pandemic and moving, I purged a lot. So I'm present to all the crap I still have to throw out, and for related to Burning Man. And so storage has been a big painful thing for 2 years of non-usage. And general maintenance, I had to fix my truck. Things cost money, and that's been hard when you don't have the cycle of using it every year. And one thing I want to definitely do is do more art workshops for our project throughout the year. And so we slowly started, and we'll continue to do those.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been kind of rough. Crystal?
Realizing how bad my short-term memory is. So just document everything. Email search function is the most important thing in my life right now. So finding every past invoice. We even went through an audit this year from the government, which was amazing, from 2019. So I had to pull every single invoice. And just and keeping that vibe alive through the pandemic has been huge for our community. Just we have a huge chat where we just are keeping going on different up-to-date things and just keeping that magic alive, so we're not strangers when we get back to Playa too.
Yeah, staying connected and putting all the pieces back together, finding all the pieces.
Right.
Yeah. All right. Anyone else on our panel? All right, Filchi, yeah, thank you.
I would say that one of the things that has been really challenging is getting it all back together again. We decided to basically start a new project in the beginning of the pandemic, when we weren't sure whether the board would survive all of this. So we've found 200 acres in New York, and we're setting up a completely separate project for our camp, because we wanted to be able to keep our community together if things fell apart for the Borg itself. And so now we have this amazing secondary project running, but we're also I'm feeling completely overwhelmed by the Borg, by the burn coming back, because my efforts are so dispersed. And so the whole prospect of delegation and coordinating all of the various pieces of what we do now, which has become pretty damn big, is really challenging.
Yeah, that sounds like a huge project. I guess if you can't get to the playa, you could buy your own.
Well, our goal is every quarter that the camp is going to have an opportunity to get together. And one of those quarters will be in Nevada, if Nevada happens, and the other 3 quarters will be in different parts of the world.
Nice. All right.
I can jump in too. So I would say the two dynamics that we're sort of grappling with at the leadership level for our camp. Number one is that we actually had quite a few people from our camp who went to the Renegade burn, and the sort of feedback from the people who went was that, okay, it wasn't as good as, the official sort of BRC kind of playa event, but it actually was still really good. And there was this sort of sense of people just went, there was no infrastructure. They didn't have these complicated spreadsheets for meals and for setup and for tear down. And they just kind of showed up and lived out of their cars and still had a good time. And so I think there's a bit of soul searching that's happening in our community of just realizing how much stress and anxiety and blood, sweat, and tears goes into building up camp, for the weeks leading up to it, and then tearing it down. And is all of that really necessary? Right? Can you still have the sort of essence of what makes playa awesome? And what's without all of that stress, and what's the cost benefit trade-off of all of those things? And so I would say that's kind of the number one thing that we're sort of thinking about. And then the second dynamic that maybe I would name is that, I don't know if this is unique to our camp or maybe something other camps are experiencing too. This would have been, I think, our 13th or 14th year on playa. And so like a lot of people who joined our camp like in their early 20s are now in their like mid to late 30s, early 40s. And a lot of people in our community are having kids. And so while we weren't like a kids camp historically at all, we're starting to like wonder, like, do we either accommodate kids? Like, does the camp grow with our original members? And like, we were originally a camp of people in their 20s, then 30s, and like now do we become a camp of like people in their 40s? Or do we kind of like move on, the older people, and like let a new generation come in and sort of, keep the sort of original spirit of the camp? So kind of like two existential questions we're dealing with as a camp brought on by the past 2 years.
Thank
I'm
you.
happy to jump into, this is Ariel, also known as Trixie from Camp Gender Blender. And some of us were actually on Playa also for the, renegade style burn. And I think when we're thinking about what does it mean to return, we're really always focused on diversity, and really we have a big social justice focus. And so what's interesting is in 2020, when we realized that no one was going to be able to return to Playa and that we were all stuck at our houses, we kind of pivoted the whole concept of what Gender Blender is about. And we moved away from, we used to be all about doing in-person events and having potlucks and hosting safer sex play parties. And we really moved into this element of, by the way, it says that I left, but I'm still here. So I hope that y'all can still hear me. Okay, great. So we really pivoted and we decided to think about like, what is the priority for us and what's the most important? And our camp has consistently been representing trans and non-binary and genderqueer people. And for us, we realized that the most important thing was making sure that our community was able to survive and thrive through a pandemic. And so we focused all of our energy and effort specifically to show that Black trans lives matter. And we started the Black Trans Lives Matter grant program. And that grant program really served to help Black trans people who didn't have access to food or shelter or housing, medical supplies, things like that during the pandemic. And what we've seen is that program has been one of the most important things that I think we've ever done, and being able to give that direct aid. And a lot of, the fundraising, actually how we did that fundraising is that we contacted burners and said, oh, if you're not going in 2020, or if you're not going to be there on Playa in 2021, what's your budget? Like, where did that, like, some people, obviously the money had to go towards other things. Some of us were all struggling. Some of us needed to figure out how to pay our own rent. But there were people that were like, oh, right, every year I spend this amount on Burning Man. And if I'm not going, I can donate that money to Black trans people who are in desperate need of housing and food and medical supplies. So that's what we've been focusing all our energy and effort on. And I think it's really interesting for us to figure out, what does it mean to return? Because what enabled, we had a very small group. It was about 5 of us that went out to Playa this year. And it was just a very small, very beautiful, like really old school. I've been burning for 16 years. It felt very DIY, very old school way of burning this year. And I think what made it really accessible is that no one had to worry about money. Nobody had to worry about like, how are we going to get there? A lot of us live in the Bay Area. It was like, can we pool, money for one car with 5 of us in it and like get that money to get ourselves there? So I think when we as Gender Blender are thinking, what is it going to take for us to be back on Playa? It's really like, how do we get those resources? What's that going to look like for us? And what is the decision about where the resources should go when we spent the past 2 years basically funding people in their everyday daily lives? What does it mean to then say, okay, we're going to spend that money to come back? And what does that look like? And I'm really curious, like, what's possible with the ticket situation? Like, I'm really curious to see if Burning Man can create a system that feels more equitable for low-income people, and figure out a way to kind of shift that system so it doesn't feel so intense. Because one thing I will say is, like, the people seeing that you can go out there for free, it's a little bit hard to be like, how are we going to go back to paying really a lot of money per person per ticket? And one thing that Gender Blender has done every year really successfully is that we've always had a scholarship program, and we've funded people who are from a low income background or from a marginalized background to be able to attend. And that's something that we're committed to doing this year as well. I just think it's extra hard when people have seen that it can all happen for a lot less money. So like, my curiosity is, what are we doing to inspire diversity? What are we doing to really inspire inclusion? What are we doing to make sure that people of the most marginalized can be able to come back home?
Thank you, Trish. Yeah, being from VW Bus Camp and having several of our members currently and actively homeless, this is a topic that's near and dear to my heart as well. So the next question for the panelists on the it's complicated topic is, what are you doing right now to get your camp off the ground? What kind of tools are you using for communication? Or are you giving surveys? What's the pulse of your camp right now? Is your camp excited or reluctant? Trixie talked a little bit about that. And how are you handling camp finances moving forward right now? It's a lot. Jason?
I find a good phone call. It's always the best way. That's why I always reach out to people individually and I call them, and I like to see how, what's happening. I'll do whatever I can to invest time into, key people who, like, whoever's going to take on logistics, transportation, whoever's going to run, deal with the kitchen, whoever's going to help with the dark room. I think identifying, those key people every year is pretty much what we do. And, tickets are always a pain in the ass for us. So it's, we never know if we're going to pull it off. Every year it's a pain in the ass for us. And then financially, we have an art project that's self-funded. So financially it's kind of a mess. So it's a little gray, but I believe it'll work out. It's always worked out, but it's just more anxiety and stress from that. So hopefully we'll continue to pull it together. Hopefully.
Best of luck. Thank you. Crystal?
So right after Freeburn, we kind of strike while the iron was hot on people who went and were so amped about 2022 happening. And I put out a survey for a call out for our build team, and just like every single different type of role available. And we've had 150 people, over 150 people apply now. So we haven't got into the actual applications, but like just having that momentum there and knowing that so many people are interested in being a part of it, and then sharing that with our existing build team is helping to build that momentum. We really need to get better at scaling though. Our leadership structure is very few people, and it's kind of aware of many hats. So getting better at scaling, and that's my personal call out I've been trying to do, is trying to find people to help out on the operational side. So putting that out on social media for my role itself is having some more support. In terms of the physical build though, like I feel super confident on that element. And then on the finances part, that is, I think for every camp right now, is the most panicked type of feeling. We had continuing to pay storage fees and everything throughout the whole year without any kind of camp dues coming in. Just now we signed up, we're going to do a fundraiser Burning Man event on New Year's Eve this year. So it's like called Playa Playground, and a bunch of Burning Man camps are coming together and setting up kind of a festival in Nevada. And then some proceeds of that are going back to the actual camps participating. So very excited to see that come to life. And it's going to be like a little mini Burning Man there. So just trying to get innovative in the ideas that we can do what we can right now before we can actually open up and start. Because it seems like all the payments come before the camp dues come in, right? So figuring out how to get ahead of that when we can.
Thank you. Yeah, we need the money. Philji?
Yeah, this has been really, really hard. So I personally have been very challenged by this, because as a general rule, we don't have any system set up for paying anything aside from our camp fee. And we run a pretty slim budget. My personal issue is I have a really hard time asking people for money if they're not actually getting anything out of it. And this has felt like that kind of situation. So a lot of the storage fees and fees that we have to handle year over year, I've taken care of the last couple of years. There's been a couple of other people who have taken some responsibility for some things that were incurred before that were supposed to be paid back in 2020, but that didn't happen. So we have a group of people who are going to start in the next few weeks figuring out a way to basically ask everyone in camp to help us fix this, so that all of the outstanding debt is not held by those of us who are currently holding it. So that's a big challenge. We also run telephone, talking to everybody individually to find out what people's intentions are and everything else. But our cycle doesn't actually start until January. So we support artists that are in our community. And so we're like talking to artists starting in November every year, but we don't actually engage the camp and start up until January. And I'm both excited and terrified at what's coming, because there's a lot to do and I want to get started right away, but I also feel completely a little overwhelmed by the whole thing, because we're running so many projects, and also my whole career and everything that I do in my normal life has transitioned drastically over the last couple of years. So trying to figure out how to continue what I'm doing and do what I used to do and carry the pay off the debt and all that, it's challenging. It's a very challenging period, but I'm really excited by the possibilities.
Thank you. Zika?
Yeah, I would say, I mean, a lot of what people are sharing is resonating with me in terms of the milk and honey experience. On like a logistical level, we have like a thing called the COA, the Committee of Awesomeness, that runs the camp every year. And so we had our COA sort of all set for Burning Man 2020. And so what we're basically doing is like going back to all the people who were on the COA from 2020 and saying like, 2020, and saying like, hey, are you still interested in this role? Are you, have you moved on? And that's sort of like a good way for us to start. We've like, at the camp, we've done a pretty good job of like fostering the next generation of leadership. We have about 70 people in our camp, and we have about 20 people on our council or committee of awesomeness. And every year we have new two camp co-coordinators that serve 2-year terms, and they rotate out, and we try to stagger it. So there's like one new person and one returning person. So there's not really like a sort of bottleneck of like one person leaving and it all relies on one person. And so, and like we're pretty good about like, you don't need to be on the committee COA in your first year in camp, but like, you better believe in your second year in camp, you're going to get the call to sort of serve in the leadership role. And so like then it's kind of like this progression where you can take a role like culture or infrastructure or kitchen, and then sort of graduate from that into sort of camp coordinator. So that's been like a good way to keep the leadership pipeline. And I'll just say on the, and happy to share more with anyone who's interested in that kind of approach. And on the finances side, we've been budgeting. I know somebody in the comment mentioned about contingency budgeting. We've got like a pretty lean budget. Like we're really only paying for like a small storage space on Treasure Island in the Bay Area, and then like a storage space in Gerlach. And we every year plan for part of our budget to go to some sort of capital and some sort of infrastructure investment. Like every year we try to like build a new thing or have some sort of new feature or new activity or new giveaway at the playa. And so we had a little bit of a buffer. So we're still doing like okay financially. We might start to pinch if we don't get dues again next year. But if all goes according to plan, we should be okay on a financial side.
Thank you. Zika, I wonder before we move on, I know Filchi had said he hates asking people for money or has trouble asking people for money. I wonder if you or anyone else on the panel also feels that way or has some tips for how to go about doing that.
Well, we've never really done, well, first of all, we've done fundraisers like in the Bay Area, like thrown parties where, where we charge for people to come, and we that money sort of fundraisers for our camp. But I would say that like we build our contingency fund and our like infrastructure fund into our dues. And so we charge people like a little bit more than cost, so that every year we have a bit of a cushion. And we also like sometimes we'll give out grants to members like through that fund. So it's not just like paying for Playa, but I totally agree with you, Filchi. Like it's hard to just like ask people for money. So I guess like what I would say, like what we do is like layer it into the dues. So yes, dues might be on the sort of pricier side, but it's all rolled in like, and that's what people think they're paying for.
Thanks.
I just wanted to respond right quick. I appreciate all of that. We also have a little bit of a contingency, but it's like literally if we're off by 10% in our budget for a year, it's not like we're going to carry the camp for 2 years. And we used to run events years ago, and they're awesome. They are so much fun. We at one point we were known as throwing the best parties in town, but we ended up deciding that that was not a viable option for us long term, because we worked our asses to the bone throwing these events, and then we were so completely wiped out. And we're like, great, we raised all this money, so we don't have any camp fees this year. But now we're so exhausted and we didn't really enjoy it that much because all of our friends came and enjoyed it, but we were working our asses off and didn't really enjoy it. And at that point in time, we made this was like, I don't know, 8 years ago or so, we made the transition from throwing events to having a camp fee. So this is all like, because of the way things have sorted out here, this is all, we weren't prepared for 2 years of being off and all of that. So I wish I could throw events. I wish we could throw events. That would be fun, but.
Yeah, I just wanted to jump in on this and say, just to share some of the things that we've gone through with fundraising. And one I will say is that something amazing happened for us on the last round of this, which is that someone really helped and contributed based on this campfire talk. And that was really helpful for us to be able to move forward in general. I feel like Gender Blender is like always like coming from behind. Like I always feel that way. I always feel like we're like, how do we survive? How do we make this work? I always feel like, something that happens in all of our planning meetings. Like I've lived with burners this whole way through, right? And I always look at what they're doing and how their camps are working. And I notice like they're coming together for their meetings and they get to just start in right away and be like, what is the art project that we're working on? Or what is our art car? And Gender Blender throughout the years, like our truth is like, we can't make it throughout a meeting like that because what's happening for us is people are dealing with really intense real world stuff. We have a lot of people in our camp that have been fired from their jobs for being trans. We have people in our camp that have lost their housing. And this is before the pandemic. You know what I mean? So I've always felt like we're this camp that's like the underdog coming from behind, trying to survive, trying to make it. And that it's not just about, can we get to Playa, but it's like, can we function in society? Like, can we persevere as a population of people that's dealing with multiple levels of oppression on a daily basis? So when it comes to asking for money, I think for us, it's also about like, how do we distribute those funds and how do we make sure that it's, it's like, yes, I want us on Playa. And I also want my people to just be surviving in daily life and being able to function and being able to make it and live. And that's like where my heart is and my passion is. And so I feel grateful for the people that have shown up and have supported Gender Blender throughout the years. And I also feel like one of the things that I'm interested in seeing is what does it look like for gifting to start earlier? And I think I said this on the last campfire talk is like, a lot of times I feel like what happens is we get to Playa and our gift economy starts, but what would it look like for some of the bigger theme camps to be like, hey, can we like sponsor a smaller theme camp this year? Like, instead of Gender Blender hustling to get all these scholarship tickets, a bigger theme camp could be like, we got you. We're going to come in and gift right away. Like before we even get onto Playa, we're going to figure this out together. Or there are theme camps that, like sometimes I look at the plug and play theme camps and I'm like, what would be really cool is if y'all wanted to like fund some of our real world issues that are happening or support some of these things that are going on. And I think it's time that we like start reimagining like, what is it that Burning Man is, right? That was my takeaway from Burning Man, kind of having to go into this like shelter in place mode and not happening, and then being like Burning Man is everywhere. I'm like, if we're everywhere, then what does it look like to tackle these social justice issues and not to hide from it and not to pretend like this isn't part of our community and part of our lived experiences?
Great questions. Thank you. Yeah. All right, so next question, panelists. What are you doing regarding, thanks. What are you doing regarding your planned interactivity for 2022? Are you changing it, nudging it, or keeping it the same? I'm curious.
We're gonna add more workshops, and we are doing more off-play workshops for our project. Yeah.
What are your workshops?
Well, we make these big giant pinhole photos, so we're gonna do pinhole workshops in the Bay Area and other places. But on Playa, we start off the week by building pinhole cameras together. And we go out on the playa and take pictures of all the art, and then we take people back and we process them and feed them and do fun stuff. And so we have art workshops
Great.
during the week. Yeah.
Thank you.
We, for those who don't know, we bring probably 20,000 pounds worth of metal on Playa and create this huge playground. And every year we have ideas for new pieces to add to our playground. We have probably a 10-year backlog of ideas and structures that we want to build. We did procure a new piece of equipment in 2020, right before the pandemic started. But to be honest, because of the 2-year lag in our ability to pay for things, I don't know to the extent that we're going to be able to add or change our offering very much. Like I said, usually we add a new item every year, but probably won't happen in 2022.
I would say that, so for the past 13 years, like our big offering for the Playa is we did like a big Friday night prayer service. You can see the picture behind me of like, a couple hundred people who joined for that. And then we served dinner to like 800 people for like Shabbat prayer service. Our camp has like roots as like originally was a Jewish camp. And I can almost guarantee that we're going to do that because it's really the heart and soul of our camp, and people really come to expect that from us. And it's one of the things that we really love doing. In 2019, we did talk about sort of upping our interactivity and like more programming, especially in past years, we had like a corner sort of camp, which is like the organization sort of expects more from you if you're like in a corner camp. But like we've done dance parties and we've done sort of workshops and games and stuff. But I think that in 2019, we were hitting like critical mass of like a lot of veteran burners who like had like past that tipping point of like, Burning Man, I'm coming to like take, and like, really having so much fun to like, okay, actually like giving is like, I'm actually coming to give, and like, I want to set up some sort of interactive activity either in camp or in Deep Playa or whatever it may be. And so I think that it would be interesting to see when we start to see our applications for 2022, what the sort of ratio is going to be of like veterans to newbies, because I think that like newbies, it's a little bit harder to like galvanize them for activities and events because it's like their first time on Playa. And so I think that'll be a lot of the equation. As I mentioned, also like a lot of people in our camp are having kids. And so like they probably may not come to Playa. And like historically, we've actually like had like dozens of applications for like 5 to 10 spots that we have open for new people. And my hunch is that like we'll actually have like less alumni returning, so like more spots for new people.
Hey, Zvika, I want to tell you, hopefully I pronounced that correctly. You were talking earlier about the disparate ages in your camp and how things are evolving. I just want to tell you that we've always been an all ages camp, even though we focus on the adults in the room. And there are so many benefits to having children around. I just can't stress enough how useful it is to have an entire community present in your camp that includes all ages. So I just want to say, go for it.
Thank you, Jochi. I see Crystal has unmuted herself.
Yeah, on the all ages thing, that was a pull port of my wanting to scale it, because I myself am going to be having a baby right before Burning Man, and I'm teeing that all up so how I can make this a reality. But in terms of our 2022 interactivity, I know a lot of people assume we're just a big sound camp at 10 o'clock, but if you've ever come into the pyramid in the day, we have 20 hours a day of interactive programming, just from like everything from all walks of life. This year, we are looking forward to having more live music and having an outdoor sound stage, so bringing artists to play acoustic from around the world. And then we really contributed in 2020 to the BRC VR. So really bringing the virtual world of Burning Man alive. And so we're figuring it out right now, but still how we're going to merge the real world and the virtual world together so that we can kind of capture some of these experiences and share it across the globe for people who can't physically or financially make it to Burning Man for certain reasons. So just thinking about how we can kind of remember the sparkle year round that way.
Nice. Go ahead, Trixie.
Oh yeah, I was just gonna jump in and say that in terms of our interactivity, Gender Blender has consistently, we always have certain things that we definitely plan on continuing to have, which is that we always have a support group for trans people. And we also always have a safer sex play party, which I think is a really important and rare thing, which is that we create a play space that centers trans and non-binary and queer people, but welcomes anyone of any gender and any sexuality to come and be with us. And I think that that's really, I don't see that happening anywhere else in the world, to be honest, right? Like I don't see that kind of play space happening. And so we're determined to make sure that those two things happen, as well as we always host a social justice workshop, that gives people education on how to be ending oppression, how to work together, what does it look like to go beyond allyship and to be accomplices with each other in solidarity to create change. And so we want to do those things. And we also really love creating and collaborating with other queer camps. And that's been a really important part of what we do, is having other queer camps to organize with and co-create with and build with. And we're happy to do that with other camps too. It just has, what we've seen is that that neighborhood really supports our vision and supports who we are. And one thing I want to say is I've noticed someone's comment that says, oh, I thought that, Burning Man is inclusive to all participants. And I think there's some truth in that. And I think there's still a long way to go, right? Like, I think my first year of burning was 2005. And I had this idea that I would like come through the entryway and everything would drop to the side. And like, it would be the end of like racism and transphobia and sexism. And I'd be in this like absolute paradise. And then you're like, wait, that's not true, because we don't know how to let go of those things because they're really ingrained in us. Right? Like there's just ways that this culture has like been embodied in us. And just because we arrive into this beautiful, expansive space, that doesn't mean we've let go of all those things. We have to actually actively work to let go of those things. And so what I've come to see is like, we're still, unfortunately, the only camp with this mission, right? Like there are other, there are camps, there are a lot of gay male camps at this point. There's like, I think about 15 of them, right? There's one lesbian camp, right? There's one trans camp, right? Like, it's like, the reason these camps are so important is because we're still not included in society. So of course we're not still 100% included when we hit Playa, right? It might feel a little bit safer than the real world, but there's still plenty of ways that we're not actually safe. So for me, when I think about where's my goal for Burning Man, I would love to see multiple camps that have the same mission as Gender Blender, right? Because if you're a gay man, you have multiple spaces you can now go. But if you're trans, you're kind of like, it's us or nothing. Like, what happens if your ex is in our camp? What are you going to do? You know what I mean? So it's like, I want there to be more spaciousness. And I want our mission to also reach out and affect other camps and other camps to be like, we also want to explore our gender and get more expansive and learn and co-collaborate. So we're always inviting that kind of collaboration and that kind of work together.
Thank you. Yeah, it sounds like camps are experiencing creative phases, identity crises, and existential crises. In light of all the challenges you have this year and have had in the last year and a half, what advice do you have for other camp leads or co-leads to find inspiration, motivation, and enthusiasm? I know I have already heard some great inspiring things this evening, but what would you say to our participants here?
I would say, for me, it's why am I here? Like what is my intention for creating this project, every year? And then asking my leads and my campmates, how are we creating magic, and how are we inspiring each other? And also always assume that someone's best intentions are in play, and just communicate.
That's great advice. Yeah, thank you.
You know,
Oh, go ahead.
oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say I'm part of the theme camp support crew or whatever they're called. Sorry guys, I don't remember the name of it. And one of the things that I know from my experience, and I've been doing this for over a decade, is empower those who want to be the captain or the chief or the instigator of a project. I think what people often do is they decide this is the project that needs to happen, and then they try and get people to do that project. But really what you should do is you should find inspiration by people who want to pick up a project. And so if someone wants to paint the ABCs, or they want to have a disco party, or they want to do this, or they want to do that, find a way to support them in making that happen, then you will succeed. And you will find lots of inspiration in everyone's creative ideas. But if you try to impose on what you see as the requirements for success, then you're probably going to end up having a lot of people trying to make things happen and then realizing that they don't really care about it. And that's how things fall apart on Playa really, really fast.
Or breeding resentment. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Crystal?
I had to say, just to start now, it's never too early. Like, people even are like, is Burning Man happening? Yeah. We went in full tilt in 2020, ready to go to 2020 if it was going to happen. You know, we didn't stop until it was that last minute call that it wasn't happening. So build up that momentum right now. And I know, back to the money thing, that we all kind of have that burden as leads and thinking about that. So tactfully share that burden, but also don't let that take away from the enthusiasm, because as long as you have those creators and those doers who are having that enthusiasm, them not knowing that the money issues you're trying to deal with, they'll help to create it. And then I still believe that the Playa magic will happen and everything will just come together when it needs to.
Thank you. Do we have a panelist who is not worried about money or does not have camp dues? Anyone that could speak to that? I know my camp doesn't have camp dues, and we aren't concerned about money right now, but our situation is different. Our interactivity is different. Maybe we can talk about that at a future event. All right, anyone else on the panel before we move on to our next poll? Zvika?
Yeah, I mean, I guess just like +1 to what like everyone has been saying about how to keep the energy and momentum going. I think something that has been like really crucial for us is like, how do we make our camp not just like a Black Rock City once a year phenomenon, but make it like an ongoing 365-day a year community. We're lucky or fortunate in that, or I don't know, but the reality is that we're mostly based in the Bay Area. And I think during COVID, we like the community was really able to show up for each other during kind of like grief and heartache and sort of financial stress and people's lives falling apart and people getting divorced and people having deaths in the family. And like, you know, we created like various WhatsApp groups and Signal groups for people who, you know, for like people who needed stuff. We have, I think, 10 doctors in our community. And so, you know, we were able to like share information about COVID and like masks and all of that. And then as things started to open up, you know, have little like socially distant things. And like we have somebody in our camp who has like a plot of land up in Mendocino. And so we did like a little mini burn on the weekend, on Labor Day weekend, where we had like 50 people go up to this land and sort of put on our own little sort of camping mini festival. And so I think just like having like thinking about not just like saving us, it obviously takes a ton of time and energy to get to the event itself. And what makes Burning Man so amazing is that we all work around the clock around the year to plan for this 1 week out of the year. But like, I guess for our experience, like save a little bit of leadership energy for the sort of like during the year connection, because then it helps like now when we're going around and like reaching out to people and saying like, hey, do you want to be on the committee of awesomeness this year? They're like, what? We haven't heard from you in 2 years. Like, no, they're like, yeah, like we've all been in touch, and it feels like there's been, at least for the folks in the Bay Area, like a pretty active community.
Great, keeping the spirit alive. All right. Regular, can you bring us our next poll to get everyone to participate? All right, what size population is your camp normally? 10 to 30 people, 30 to 60 people, 60 to 100, or more than 100? Give it a minute. All right, small camps in the house, mostly 10 to 30 people. Only a few with more than 100. Great, thank you, everyone. All right, so let's move on and shift into our next topic, camp leadership and succession. What is the structure of your leadership in camp? What is your leadership structure for the camp that you're running? What does that look like? Trixie?
Yeah, I'm happy to jump in because I'm excited to see that there's so many other small camps. I just wanted to name that Gender Blender intentionally on Playa stays small. I think off Playa we have more people, but on Playa we really want to create an atmosphere where everybody knows each other. So we actually cap at 50. We never go above 50, and most often we're about 40 people. And the reason for that is we want it to feel like when you come into our camp that you know everybody, that it's a genuine community, and that there's a feeling of safety and a feeling of protection and a feeling that people are going to see you and know your pronoun and not mispronoun you or misgender you, and that you're going to have a space where you can be your full authentic self and be seen and be known. So that's been really important for us. And in terms of our leadership structure, from the very beginning, we wanted to create a structure where there was always more than one leader. So we often have between 5 and 7 people that make up the leadership team. And in the pandemic, we've really transferred to this idea of having 2 teams. One is the on Playa leadership team, and then there's the off Playa team, right? So we're gonna continue to do, and as things are returning, we're trying to do workshops and parties again. And so we want that realm of people who are doing that work off Playa to have a leadership team, and then to have a leadership team for the people that are going to Playa. And I just wanted to say one more thing about the way we collaborate with other camps and lift up the fact that Gender Blender and Comfort and Joy in 2019 started a collaboration called the Queer Dome, which is the first ever queer-centered psychedelic harm reduction. And some of you might be familiar with Zendo and that project, which covers a lot of harm reduction on Playa. And we were noticing that a lot of queer people needed a specific space in case they were having a challenging psychedelic journey, or really in case they were going through anything that was traumatic and needed a safe space to be. So we actually worked with Zendo to train over 100 volunteers to create a space which is housed in Comfort and Joy, but has volunteers from Gender Blender, has volunteers from really all across the queer camps, to be a space where anyone that's having a challenging journey of any background or any kind of journey can come and be and know that they have people that will take care of them. And that includes therapists and medics and people who are just average people that got trained to be able to sit and hold space for this. So I wanted to mention that project too, in case anyone's excited about that or wants to be a part of that. We're always seeking volunteers and donations to make that run.
Great, thank you. Yeah, I'm definitely excited about that. Are you having to deal with any leadership changes this year?
You're asking me specific? Yeah, great. Yes. Yes, it is interesting. A lot of our people aren't going to be able, there's a real concern from some of the people in leadership that they won't be able to actually physically get to Playa this year for various different reasons. So I think it's going to be really interesting because a lot of us are leaning into the desire to be on the leadership team for off Playa. And I'm like, wait, we need people that can actually get to Playa. And so we're in these conversations of what is that going to look like? What is it going to take for people to get there? A lot of that is about finances. A lot of that, again, is
some people, we had a core group of people that lived in the Bay Area, and a lot of those people actually had to disperse during the pandemic. And so some of our people aren't as close to Playa as they used to be. And so we're trying to figure out, well, what does it look like for them to come back? What does it look like for our leadership team now? And a lot of people, again, like I said, like we've been driving our energy and effort into just sustaining and into survival. And so I think when it comes to the leadership team, the vast majority of the 7 people that have been holding down leadership have been really focused on the Black Lives Matter Trans Grant Program, have been really focused on basic needs and basic necessities. And so I think, I have a lot of faith in us. And I think what's going to happen is as we get closer, it's going to be like, it's go time, let's make this happen. But I do think we're trying to figure out that combination of what does it mean to sustain off Playa as well as on Playa.
Okay, yeah, thank you. So you're not the only ones. Anybody else? What are the leadership structures in the other camps on our panel?
Sure, I can go. We have about 200 campers, and our leadership team is 3 to 4 people up in Canada, and it poses a ton of logistics, but we have 60 people on our build team. So within that build team, it breaks down into different areas in terms of kitchen and plumbing and generator energy, all that kind of stuff. So they self-manage within themselves, so that hopefully that leadership team doesn't have to just checking in with all of them. Once you kind of be like, okay, you're going to create the power grid, it's like go time, and it's just a two-way conversation back and forth that you're trusting that they're going to make it happen.
Is it strategic that you have 3 people when you're making?
No, that's just how it happens.
All right.
I
Thank you.
can share. I'm Jeffer. I'm sorry I was a little bit late. My camp is about 300, and we have typically we have 2 founders. The 2 founders have been consistent since 2003. And so we have a core leadership that's solid. We also have 7 to 8 what we call captains. And the captains are both men and women, maybe need a better name. But that group, it has been consistent. We typically lose a couple each year because of whatever complications they have in their lives. But I would say typically get 6, maybe 7 captains that will show up. And then we also have some craftspeople that do power or steel or different things that have real specialization that kind of focus on those areas. But we all come together as a kind of Root Society family. I run Root Society, and that's our group. And we've leaned on that group over the years, and different people have financially been in different places, and we just figure out how to glue it together, and that's our leadership group.
Great, thank you, Jeff. We have an invited panel of speakers here with us tonight. So if everyone can keep themselves on mute, we'll come to your questions and comments at the end. You can put them in the chat, but it's always great to hear from a new voice. So, Filchi?
Yeah, so we have a rather different situation, I guess. We started out as 12 people, and now we run about 125. And we run about 125 because the scale of what we do requires a lot of people to build. We have 25 people that build the actual camp, and we couldn't do it with anything less than 50 to 75 people. Like I said earlier, we bring tens of thousands of pounds of equipment on Playa. We started as a camp that was based on an existing community that has existed since the 30s here in Southern California. So we're an outgrowth of an existing community. Our leadership is basically, it's hard to explain, but basically the camp wouldn't happen without me, because I'm the one that does all the communication with everybody, and I'm the one that does all the paperwork and dots all the T's and crosses all the I's. We have about 12 different sections of the camp, and those people, there's 12 or so. Everyone is paired up. So there's about 24 people that lead the various processes of the camp. But my goal is to get the camp to the point where I'm not involved. I've had that goal for several years now, where I can show up and just be a guest instead of being the guy who made it happen. So we couldn't do it without the people running the various portions of the camp, and they couldn't do it without me running all the logistics, because nobody really wants to deal with anything until we get there. So we build portions of the camp in terms of our logistics and stuff, with my support moving up to it. And then as we get there, the idea is that the people that are running the various sections take over. And so speaking to Trixie's point, we have an on playa leadership and we have an off playa leadership, but because I'm communicating with everybody, everybody still looks to me. But I definitely couldn't do it on my own. Hope that helps.
Yeah, thank you. Have you done any succession planning?
Well, I didn't hear you. There was
Have you
someone's
done
phone.
any succession planning? That's okay, Jason. Thanks.
Our succession planning is specifically.
Sorry.
It's okay. Our succession planning is specifically based on technology. We're trying to offload things that are in the planning and logistics up front that I do and that's in my head and stuff like that. We're trying to offload that into other into computers and stuff, so that a lot of the front loaded stuff can not have to rely on a small group of people, but instead can rely on a system. We're building software systems for all of this. Great,
nice. Jason, what's your leadership structure look like?
Sorry about that. So we, have this art project, and we have, a dark room, chemistry, and, things we gotta, consumables. And the most important thing is we have a manual or documentation of everything from logistics to chemistry mixtures to, everything. And so it's abstracted. And then once it's sort of written word that evolves every year, we do whatever we can to make everyone a leader in our camp. And the goal is for them to engage participation. I mean, ultimately there's like a captain or someone's responsible for like this one thing ultimately, but the point is that anyone can jump in and pick up the ball, including outside participants outside of the camp. I mean, ideally, that's how we do interactivity, is we have this art project that anyone can jump in and anyone can participate in. So the goal is to engage participation versus having people, control or hold the reins on like one thing, and then they're the boss of that. It's versus give it away and empower people, or share the love, basically. So that's our strategy of how we do it.
Thank you.
Jason, that's how we get new membership, is we get people to get so involved in engaging with the camp that they decide they have to join us. It happens all the time.
Yeah, me too.
Nice. What about other succession plans? Do any of the other panelists have different plans for dealing with leadership changes?
Yeah, I'm happy to jump in. I mean, I think I shared this earlier, that we have a rotating camp leadership where we sort of change leaders every 2 years and have them staggered, and that's worked out really well for us. The only time where it hasn't worked is where somebody has gotten burnt out after the first year and they don't return, and so then we've got 2 new leaders, but we make it work. And then just +1 to what some of the other panelists have shared, that we did a big effort, I think 4 or 5 years ago, to write everything down. So now every leadership role, whether it's infrastructure or kitchen or whatever, everything is written down. So honestly, someone could just show up on Playa and sort of lead that part if they had the sort of manual. We have a lot of type A people in our camp, as I'm sure most of you all do as well. Things that we are struggling with, one is that there definitely is a phenomenon of sort of camp coordinator burnout. We have 2 camp coordinators and then like this committee of awesomeness that's like 20 people. But we have a sort of bad track record where like after someone's been a camp coordinator for a year or two, they get really burnt out and they almost always take a year off, and sometimes just like totally fade from the community because they've been A, so burnt out, and B, like there's just a lot of politics and like hurt feelings and drama that people deal with. Like the camp coordinator just becomes the sort of like receptacle of a lot of the of shit that happens. And so it's unfortunate and really sad, and we're trying to figure that out. And then another thing is like what a few people have mentioned is that like there's like if you are the camp coordinator, you spend most of the time doing the work off Playa, but then you also are the coordinator on Playa, so you can't actually enjoy all the sort of fruits of your labors. And so we've been talking about exploring a model where we have a pre-Playa coordinator and an on Playa coordinator, so that people who do all the heavy lifting leading up to camp can actually enjoy themselves, and the people who kind of chilled in the lead up to camp can do the hard work on Playa itself. And obviously there's some challenge of like part of being the on Playa coordinators, you have all that context of leading up to it that got us there. But we were thinking about experimenting with like dividing those roles to make them more sustainable.
Thank you.
I wanted to say something right quick, if it's okay, about this concept of writing everything down and having a manual. We have everything documented in great detail, but I find that's really fascinating because as a general rule, most people don't read most things that are sent to them if it's not an Instagram post. So the idea of having someone suddenly be able to pick up a piece of the operation in the middle of Playa, having read the manual, it doesn't work in our experience. And so we have to go through like training. We really do our best to try and train people prior to Playa. And while we have everything written down, we don't really rely upon that because it just doesn't seem to work. And we bring instructions and manuals and everything on Playa with us, but at the time that they are needed, they are often unable to be found, or they blow away in the wind or whatever. So I would just encourage everyone that's listening to this to focus on also training, not just a manual. I'm sure everyone does, but I just want to.
Yeah, all different kinds of projects need different kinds of supports and in order to make them work, for sure. So, all right, let's move on to our third topic, resources. So I'm wondering from the panelists, what are your favorite resources that you're using, be they Burning Man resources, other online resources, or something to facilitate community, or that you're using in your community where you are?
So part of our project is that we eat really well because it's important because we're working. We have to nourish ourselves. So compost camp is one of the best resources. I think it's still underused. And as long as you separate your burnables from your actual recyclables and trash, so much can be composted. And once you learn how to, leverage that, your leave no trace becomes a lot faster.
Where is compost camp usually located?
They have like satellite compost dumpsters. I think there's like 3 or 4 interdispersed in the city. And they're literally, as long as you're a good composter, you could just bring your stuff there and they chuck in this big giant dumpster and it turns into dirt, and they're doing what they can to grow stuff out in the desert. So compost.
Yeah.
I'll second that. We in 2020 we were seriously considering becoming one of the satellite camps for compost camp, and putting one of their dumpsters in our space. I would not be surprised to see us do that in the future.
Yeah, they're working on a lot of projects on and off Playa, and to further the technology even of composting altogether. So yay, ideate. What else?
Yeah, ideate is incredible. As long as you learn all the things you need to do in advance about no stickers on the fruit peels and everything like that, like just making sure that who's ever in charge of that run that day is just checking to follow all their rules. Otherwise, it can be a little bit of a disaster in the heat. We also loved using I can't even think of what they're called right now, but they're the compost toilets. And just a great experience with them and having such a large camp, even so that having them there for build week, all burn week, and then part of strike, they were awesome to work with too. And just, yeah. Ecozoic, thank you.
Nice.
Zendo.
Mhm. Fantastic resource.
I would
Yeah, I wanna
go ahead.
first. No, you could go.
I would just say that like we had an interesting experience. I don't know, this is a little bit off topic, but we were like a freestanding camp for our first 10 years. And then for our last 3 years, we joined a village. And so we've been part of Nectar Village for the past 2 or 3 years, I can't remember. And it's been really awesome, like both from a logistical perspective and from like a sort of environmental friendliness and sort of not wasting resources perspective to like partner up with multiple camps. One of the camps in Nectar Village is Snow Cone Solar, and so like we have our own solar panels that we actually donated to Fly Ranch because now we're part of Nectar Village, and so we can just piggyback on Snow Cone Solar's sort of power and like to do all of the water. Like I think there are 4 camps in our village, so we could all do the logistics of that together. And like we used to have this like big, we called it the self-care palace, which was like a bathhouse with lots of oils and kind of self-care accoutrement. And but now like one of the camps that we camp with has a steam bath, and so like we're like, okay, we don't need to build that anymore. And so just kind of we're able to like maintain our unique camp identity while still being able to do shared infrastructure. And so something for folks to consider is like, what might you benefit from joining a village?
Yeah, I want to just piggyback up what you just said and lift up that Gender Blender is always in deep community and connection with all the other queer camps. And that's what makes Queer Dome happen. That's what makes us be sustainable. So I just want to give a lot of love and props to all those camps, and also give some love to POC and KViva, because they're also doing a lot of great work that connects with the work that we're doing. And to just say that also, I think the Rangers are a really great resource. Being in touch with them before we even get to Playa has been really helpful for us.
Yeah, definitely, for sure. So what about off Playa resources? Or Filter, did you have something you wanted to add?
I was just going to say, on the subject of villages, we get asked every year to join a village, and it's so tempting. It's just such a great idea. But one of our goals many years ago was to get next to district, because we see, and the numbers show, that between our visitors and district, we're like the best place to be in the day on Playa. We just love being next to district. And so every time someone asks us to be a village, we would have to move and get away from district. So we constantly think, oh, we should form a village ourselves, but then we've already got so much stuff going on. Who knows whether that'll end up happening? But you should always try to be near camps that you like, and that support you, and that you support them. Like what Trixie is saying, is like try to really focus on being around your fellow travelers, because it will make you stronger and make this easier, and you'll have more fun. So
Thank you.
Nothing is cheap to rent, like heavy duty machinery and stuff. So share that. We get a lot of machines, and so do our neighbors. So we try and we like have group chats with all of them once we find out our placement, and then see what we can kind of share costs on, or share timing wise with all of our rentals.
Great. Yeah. Are any of the other panelists planning to share resources? Yeah.
Historically, we share our water delivery because we have a dark room. And that's, we have a water cube we bring out. It's half full, but and we are open to sharing our power grid and maybe our freezer with food camps, but yeah, it's usually water for sure.
Trixie, I saw you shaking your head, yes.
Oh yeah, we share every year. We're sharing resources. In the past, we shared a lot of resources with 8-Bit Bunny, which is our neighbor camp. We've shared a lot of the water resources and the power resources with them. We've also shared with Beaverton and Comfort and Joy in the past. So we definitely will figure out this year who our neighbors will be and what it looks like to share with them for sure. And there's one more thing that I want to share about sharing, which is that one of my most favorite years of Playa was 2017, where a camp that, Gender Blender is traditionally in the 730 and C sector. And there was a camp all the way in 2 and H. They do foam. They're like this amazing camp where they have, I don't know if you've ever been in those amazing showers and you get like foamed up and it's like really great because you come out and you're like finally feeling great after being in the dust for so long. And in 2017, their theme was transformation. And they shared the resource with us in the sense that they came to us and they asked, what would it look like for us to put together a camp that was gender expansive, that had resources on that. And so I think there's different kinds of resources, right? Like there's the like physical infrastructure resources where you're like, can we share our power together? And can we share our water? And what about our storage containers? But they really came to us to get this other resource, which is like an intellectual resource of what does it look like to create a specific kind of workshop and a specific kind of environment that allows for people to be more expansive. And it was a really great honor for us to be able to give that resource. So I just want to say that I think there's different kinds of resources, and that sometimes I think people are always just looking for the technical resources. And so you end up kind of looking to bigger camps for that. But I think a lot of us that maintain these smaller camps have other kinds of resources that we'd be happy to offer.
Yeah, so that's a great plug, actually. Gender Blender has this resource to offer, and if anyone is looking for that intellectual resource. All right, I'd like to leave a little time for a few questions, and I will introduce D-Rex, who is a fabulous new Camp Network camp support team member. If you want to unmute yourself, D-Rex. Hi.
Hello.
Do we have some questions?
Yes, we have a question from Christian. Is anyone changing their traditional theme to a new theme for their camp in 2022?
Great question, Christian. Thank you. Nobody making a big change like that. Okay.
All right. Another.
Oh,
Go ahead.
Go first, and then I'll share.
No, you go ahead. Go ahead.
Also, it's great to see you again. It's so fun. So we always keep the theme of Gender Blender, but we kind of have like a sub theme within the theme. Right. So, and sometimes that theme is more of like an internal, like it's just like, we know that we're carrying this theme internally. It might not be what we like externally face, but like, for an example, in 2019, our internal theme was healing, because a lot of people in our camp had been through some pretty traumatic events. And so that was our internal theme. So like, in addition to being called Gender Blender, we knew that like our goal for that year was healing. And so I think in 2022, we'll probably have a conversation as to like, we try to listen to what the theme of Burning Man is, and then also have our own internal theme of like, what is it that we've lived through and what are we processing? And a lot of that also, I think we as a camp, we go to Temple Burn together. And I feel like that's where we bring some of that theme. So it's not always like seen by everyone, but it's definitely, it's like coming through in the core.
That's a great, interesting spin on how to live your theme in your theme camp. Thank you.
All right. I have another question here. It is, what did we learn from Renegade Man that we can bring fully to 2022?
Less is more.
Yeah, that we can do it. I loved being at Renegade Burn. It was so empowering. It was just this DIY experience of like, we can figure this out and we can be sustainable and we could do it. And exactly, like, less is more. If you just, I felt like everything we did was epic, right? And it was like very, very small. Like we put up one little thing and we were like, we did it, and just that sense of empowerment, that sense of feeling that anything you're dreaming of is possible.
Yeah, I think the lessons from the last 2 years, not even just limited, but not just limited to, but including Renegade Burn, are going to be coming up and being processed and chewed on by all of us for quite some time.
I don't know that lesson resonates with our core group. As a general rule, our community gathers every week, and we have been, like I said, for decades. And so that's the less is more, our regular weekly stuff. And the camp itself is largely inhabited by acrobats and engineers. And certainly less is more is something useful for engineers, but if we don't give our engineers something to build, they're not very happy. So the idea of like going out there and not having infrastructure and not building anything probably wouldn't resonate with our core constituency, our core membership, the people who make us what we are. But I resonate with the idea. I like it. I try to live that in my life, but I don't know that it works for the camp itself.
I want to add a couple more things that we learned from Renegade Burn. And some of those things are the importance of reconnection and the importance of returning to in-person life and the importance of getting away from being on Zoom and being on our computers, and also the delicate balance of that. Like the real reality that all of us have been traumatized by this pandemic, and that it's beautiful and painful to return, and that people literally are trying to remember how to socialize, trying to remember how to do basic conversations, trying to remember what does it feel like to cuddle again? What does it feel like to be safe again? How do we talk about consent? And so I think for us, our big lesson was just like, how do we give more spaces and even more workshops or more information on reconnection? And I'm not sure if I think they were called I think they were called BED. They used to do all that amazing consent work, and they would put up all that stuff in the porta potties. And I just was thinking about them because I felt like that's such an important piece of this of being on Playa, is creating those like consensual touch spaces, and that reconnection and the importance of just being back together was everything.
I just I'll plus one that, but like I want to also emphasize something that it might have been you, Ariel, or somebody earlier mentioned in regards to Renegade Burn. I wasn't there, but one of the things I heard from almost everyone who was there was like how much more diverse it felt than actual sort of official Playa, and like for the very simple reason that like it was free. And a lot of people that my friends bumped into said like, I've been wanting to go to Burning Man for years and I couldn't afford it. And so I'm here to like get a taste of it because I can afford zero. And so I think that there's just something, you know, there's obviously like when we're talking about how much like Renegade Burn was not like Playa, and how much we appreciate, you know, all the things that Burning Man org does to like make Playa awesome. Like, I think we just need to be honest about the downside, is that like the cost is prohibited, and the org does like a great job of, you know, giving subsidized tickets and things like that. But, you know, I think the reality is just like, from what I was told, it was just much more diverse because of that.
Yeah, thank you for all of your viewpoints. There is a list of resources that we have put together that could be useful for camps, and the link for that is in the chat. Also, there is Burner Network, which I'd like to hand this over to Sander if he would like to talk a little bit about that.
Sure. Hi, everybody. I am Sandor with the TCO of Hoopla, and I'm part of the team that is working on Burner Network. We have a group that's been pulled together to help give some money out to camps. A few folks here that are in this call I know have applied for grants. We would encourage all of you to apply. We are almost ready to announce our first two winners of our grants, and one of the people in this call, I think, is going to be pleased with that. So we're always looking for more volunteers. We're always looking for more donations, and we're always looking for more camps in need. And you can find us at burnernetwork.org. Thanks.
Nice, thanks, Sander. Okay, D-Rex, do we have another question from our participants?
Yes, we have a final question for Ariel, and somebody asked, how do they sign up for that queer Sendo? I think it's the queer dumb, actually.
Yeah, we would love more volunteers with Queerdom. I'm going to put again in the chat box my phone number. There's also 2 websites to help find us. Both Comfort and Joy has Queerdom on their website, and then Gender Blender, we run through Gender Illumination, and we have a little link to that page also, so you can find us on either one of those websites. And I'll put my phone number in the chat. The best way to reach me is just text me, and I'd be happy to connect you. And in terms of the work of Queerdom, it's both happening on and off Playa, so we're always looking for volunteers and both on Playa to help be sitters, but we're also looking for people that want to help make this happen off Playa. What we do is we show up at events, so that can be parties, that can be gatherings. So we're always looking to both be asked to come and be at an event, and we are also always looking for more volunteers to make that a reality.
Great, thank you, Ariel. Thank you all on our panel for joining us tonight, for your time and expressing your viewpoints. They're very valuable to all of us in our audience. Crystal, Zvika, Trixie, Filchi, and Jason, thank you so much. And thank you all for joining us. Stay tuned for our next Campfire Talk. It will be Ask a Placer, where we will have a panel of placers to tell us about how placement will work in 2022. And they'll be available to field your placement questions. It'll be at the same time on December 14th. If you registered for this talk, this one, be on the lookout. We'll be sending you the information for that. And Peta, thank you for putting the link for our feedback form in the chat. All right, have a great evening or rest of your day, wherever you are. Good night.
Thank you all. Stay in touch.
Yeah, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure.
Cool.